Hi, good morning everyone. My name is German, and today we're going to talk about one of the well-known author whose name is Edgar Allan Poe. Okay, so we're going to start by mentioning some points that we are going to talk about today. So we are going to start by explaining the timeline of his biography. In the second place, we're going to mention some important features regarding this author. After that, we're going to point out his work. And finally, we're going to talk about the importance that this author had. So let's begin. As you can see here, we have the timeline. We're going to mention that Edgar Allan Poe was born on January 19th in 1809. After that, an important fact happened in 1826. Edgar Allan Poe entered the University of Virginia, and in 1836, while he was working as an editor in Richmond, Virginia, he got married with his cousin, who was 13 years younger. In 1847, his wife Virginia fell ill and died of tuberculosis. Unfortunately, in 1849, Edgar Allan Poe died on October 7th at the age of 40 years old. Okay, so now we have to talk about some important features. And we're going to start by mentioning that during his childhood, when he was only 3 years old, his parents died. So John Allan was supposed to take care of him. He was a wealthy tobacco merchant. During his adolescence, after fighting with Allan over his heavy gambling debts, he was forced to leave University of Virginia after only a month. And in that university, he was studying language. Just to keep in mind, Edgar Allan Poe served 2 years in the U.S. Army and won an appointment to West Point. After another falling out, Allan cut him off completely and he got himself dismissed from the academy for rule infractions. Okay, in 1836, while he was working, he got married. As I mentioned before, he got married with his cousin, Virginia Clem. He also completed his first full-length work of fiction, which was Arthur Gordon Pym. It was published in 1838. Allan Poe lost his job as a messenger due to his heavy drinking. That was one of the main problems that he had to struggle with. After this, the couple moved to Philadelphia, where he started to work as an editor for the Gentleman's Magazine. And in this company, he was he became well known actually. Okay, by 1838, he began writing mystery stories, including The Murders in the Rue Morgue and The Purloined Letter. These works would earn him a reputation as the father of the modern detective story. Another important feature is a relationship that he had with his wife. They were very close, but unfortunately, she died. After becoming involved with several women, Edgar Allan Poe returned to Richmond, and it happened in 1849. During this time, he got engaged to an old woman whose name was Elmira Shelton. In 1849, he died, but his death was a mystery because it all happened before the wedding that he was supposed to have with this woman whose name was Elmira. Those circumstances are somewhat unclear because his body was found after 3 days when he was reported as missing. There are some hypotheses regarding his death. Some people said that he was kidnapped, and others said that it was due to his due to due to the alcohol, but it is unclear. So now we're going to watch a short video about his work, and after this we're going to comment. Okay, so let's start.
Beyond fear, Poe's stories use violence and horror to explore the paradoxes and mysteries of love, grief, and guilt, while resisting simple interpretations or clear moral messages. And while they often hint at supernatural elements, the true darkness they explore is the human mind and its propensity for self-destruction. In The Telltale Heart, a ghastly murder is juxtaposed with the killer's tender empathy towards the victim, a connection that soon returns to haunt him. The title character of Lysia returns from the dead through the corpse of her husband's second wife, or at least the opium-addicted narrator thinks she does. And when the protagonist of William Wilson violently confronts a man he believes has been following him, he might just be staring at his own image in a mirror. Through his pioneering use of unreliable narrators, Poe turns readers into active participants who must decide when a storyteller might be misinterpreting or even lying about the events they're relating. Although he's best known for his short horror stories, Poe was actually one of the most versatile and experimental writers of the 19th century. He invented the detective story as we know it, with The Murders in the Rue Morgue, followed by The Mystery of Marie Roget and The Purloined Letter. All three feature the original armchair detective C. Auguste Dupin, who uses his genius and unusual powers of observation and deduction to solve crimes that baffle the police. Poe also wrote satires of social and literary trends and hoaxes that in some cases anticipated science fiction. Those included an account of a balloon voyage to the moon and a report of a dying patient put into a hypnotic trance so he could speak from the other side. Poe even wrote an adventure novel about a voyage to the South Pole and a treatise on astrophysics, all while he worked as an editor, producing hundreds of pages of book reviews and literary theory. An appreciation of Poe's career wouldn't be complete without his poetry, haunting.
Okay, so now let's continue. So as we mentioned, as we watch in the video, Edgar Allan Poe was was a well-known writer, not only because of the way that because of the words that he used to apply, but also he was well known by the way he used to write histories. Okay, so we're going to start in this part by talking about one of the most famous masterpieces that this author has, which is The Murder in the Rue Morgue. The Murder in the Rue Morgue, it's a short story which was published in a magazine in 1941, and it has been described as one of the first modern detective story. The mystery of Mary Royet is followed, and it is based on a real life crime that took place in New York City around 1841, when the corpse of a young girl called Mary Royer was found floating in the Hudson River. And to complete these two stories, we have The Purloined Letter. It is the third detective story of Edgar Allan Poe. In this story, a letter goes missing and is being used to blackmail an unnamed woman. So, as you can see, these stories are very connected, and it has a main character who is Agustin Dupin. Okay, so let's see, what do we have? Without a doubt, we have to mention the Black Cat. The story's narrator is an animal lover who, as he descends into alcoholism and perverse violence, begins mistreating his wife and his black cat Pluto. When Pluto attacks him in self-defense one night, he sees the cat in a furry cut out one of its eyes and hands it. This is a tragedy. I would say that this is a very an story that is related to something not very common, because during this in this book we can see that the main character, ended up killing his wife, which is something very hard to believe. Okay, so let's move on to the last masterpiece that we have in this presentation, which is The Fall of the House of User. It contains one of the most sublime opening passages, in one extended paragraph containing 117 words. Alright, so let's see what else. What do we have here? So, Alan Poe's death left a mystery that has lingered for more than a century. As I said before, his death is not clear. Poe's cause of death as congestion of the brain, supposed to be due to alcohol poisoning. And an important thing to mention is that Rufus Griswold, who was his rival. In this case, Rhoda described him this after the death of Edgar Allan Poe. Described this author as a morally bankrupt, drunkard womanizer, and due to his comments, Edgar Allan Poe became more popular among people. So before we finish, we have to mention some important, or why we consider, in this case, why we consider as Edgar Allan Poe very important. So we have to mention that he transformed the genre of horror story with his masterful tales of psychological depth and insights. Another important fact that we have to acknowledge is that he was a pioneer of science fiction. He was an early pioneer in the genre of science fiction because he was very passionate and fascinated by the science of his time, and he used to write stories about new inventions. And the last but not least is that he was the father of the detective story. He's credited with inventing the modern detective story with the murders in the Rue Morgue. His concept of deductive reasoning, which he called ratiocination, inspired countless of authors. In some of them are Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes. So that was it for today, and thank you so much for your time. That's it. Bye bye.